In this week's episode, I put Colt on the hot seat and really pick his brain on all things creativity. So, in this episode, we're going to learn what the heck is creativity? What do we mean by that? Why does it matter? How can we be better at it? And why our organizations will benefit from it. So, let's get started.
Are you looking for a positive influence in your personal or professional life?
Do you need some inspiration?
Hi, I'm Colt Briner.
And I'm Sarah Armstrong.
We're on a journey of elevation,
learning and sharing what we discover about how to live fulfilling lives and bring out the best in those around us.
Join us as we explore multiple perspectives, ideas, and influences on our own personal journeys of elevation.
Well, Colt, it's a pleasure to be with you today. We've had a number of episodes where we've had some guests, but today it's going to be just you and I talking about a topic that I know is near and dear to your heart.
Oh, yes. Yes, and it's intimidating. We have so many great guests, and it's like we, put a hand up to take an episode to ourselves. It's like, man, this better be good.
Yeah, you better have some good stuff to share.
Totally.
I have no doubt that you have amazing things to share. So we're going to kind of jump to it. Mm-hmm. A little bit of backdrop is if you watched the first episode of Board of Directors, you may know that one of the main components of the relationship between Colt and I is that he really helps me be more creative, challenges me to think about things differently. And his role in my life, both personally and professionally, is to elevate my own creativity. Oh, wow. And knowing that is what you're very passionate about, we thought we'd take a stab at getting insights from you for our audience on how they may want to elevate their creativity. So I'm excited to talk about this with you today.
Great. And I always appreciate your enthusiasm when I have something to share.
Well, okay, so let's just kind of start from the beginning because creativity means a lot of different things to a lot of different people.
It's so true.
So can you just level set for those that are listening, when we say elevating creativity, what are we going to talk about today?
I mean, it really is true that people have like often a preconceived notion about creativity, and it tends to be like married to in people's minds. Oh, you're artistic. Okay, So that's not what I want to talk about. Really, what I'm trying to talk about with creativity is the ability to take something from mind to reality. And in the context of business, it's like from mind to an improved business outcome of one kind or another, right? So generating an idea happens in your head and then manifests into reality for a positive business outcome.
So this could be, when you say creativity, you're talking about creative solution design, creative product development, managing your teams in a more creative or innovative way.
Totally right. I mean, it can touch every area of business. You talked about product development. That's one people tend to think of. Marketing, also an area people tend, creativity marketing. But if you really get your head around how creativity can apply in business, you're in client engagement, you're in contracting terms, cost reduction, retail design, waste management, supply chain. I mean, it's like creativity has a place in, I would argue, every function of business.
And why do you think, two questions.
Yeah.
Why do you think it's important for businesses and business professionals to learn more and develop skills around creativity?
Sure.
And then the second part of that question is, and why is now a very important time to do so?
Wow. Okay. Yes. So creativity will help you with your problem solving, right? So improve problem solving. You're going to get better skilled at risk taking, which is sort of an interesting thing to think about. Organizations that foster creativity have higher employee engagement and retention and better employee satisfaction. Organizations with creativity are better protected from disruption, right? So sort of status quo organizations are certainly more vulnerable to disruption in the marketplace, but those that are disrupting themselves are in a better position to defend against that. And then in so many business practices, you do have to have increments of ideation, right? So you can undertake an ideation, they call brainstorming or whatever. Let's get into the war room and figure this out. Just more effective outcomes when you undertake an exercise like that.
Yeah. And so that all makes total sense. And why now?
Now, why now? Yeah. A few things about that. So the World Economic Forum over the last 5 years increased the position on the number one, on the top skills, the top 15 skills to have. The position of creativity has gone from 10th place to third. That's just an indicator. But why has it done that? And I think this is because the amount of combinatorial possibilities that have emerged from the advancement of technology and process and et cetera, and how empowered both individuals and organizations are to create in fantastic ways and have access to creative tools, prototyping tools, and other ways to create and move forward and design and innovate. I mean, it's just exploded, right?
Mm-hmm.
So having those creative capacities gives organizations the opportunity to take advantage of like a sea change in terms of capacity to innovate, develop, try things, take risks, etc. And that's why I think it's become so important now.
And as a leader in a particular industry or in a particular organization, how can I just get a sense of how creative my organization is or how my leadership team is? How do you gauge that inside an organization?
Ask them. No, I think you. So there is a bit of a like self-assessment component here. You can sort of get a read on: do you find that you or your staff are encouraged to take risks? Have you made it safe or punitive to take risks and to fail? If you want to be creative over the long term, you will find failures. And what do you do? What is it that you do with failures? How do you act from a moment of failure? Do you grow from that? Learn from that? Do you reward creative thinking when people come with ideas? Do you like embrace that, elevate that, showcase that, even if it's like maybe that didn't produce the outcome, but man, we learned a lot in this and we want to credit Jim or Susan or whomever for coming up with this? That's rewarding it. Oh, and a great practice that we learned from you, Sarah. Do you work to find the best idea in the room, right? That's that kind of like talking last and understanding the different personalities in the room and those who tend to be more quiet or take more time to think. You're giving them that space and you're letting the quiet voices. Like these are the things that you look for to understand, are you engaging the minds that are present in your organization? Are you open to different opinions?
What's coming up for me as you're talking about this, Colt, is this is a lot to do with culture. And as is so many of our topics, right? We always end up coming back to the culture inside of an organization.
Yeah.
And the questions that you mentioned asking, I mean, they could be part of an engagement survey. They could be part of your one-on-ones, your skip level meetings, things of that nature. Are there other tactics that an organization could use to really get a good sense of how the culture supports creativity?
Yes, I there's something about what comes up for me when you ask that question is the innovation adoption curve, right? So this is the classic where you've got your innovators, your early adopters, early majority, late majority, and then institutionalists, otherwise known as laggards. I learned this a while ago, and it kind of blew my mind that if you wanted to have an innovative organization, it wasn't about just populating every seat with innovators.
Right.
It was about having a sense of the critical role, truly critical role that every layer of that innovation adoption curve is going to play to actually get something effectively out to market or adopted by your organization. You need to have people who, this is going to sound negative, but it's not, who are playing the role of having a foot on the brake, right? So these are your laggards and institutionalists. So you need to have people who are in that mid-tier who are looking for the proof points and the data to drive how they make decisions. And you need to have people on the early side who just by virtue of excitement want to jump into something. And it's first being totally aware that you need all of those personalities and roles in your organization, and then educating them to respect and see that they are all playing a mutual role towards ultimately bringing great ideas into an institutionalized state, because you can't get that far without the institutionalists, right? That was a major culture shift for me, because I really did just used to have this perspective of, if you want to innovate, every seat is an innovator, but that's chaos.
Right. Well, I mean, it comes back to why a board of directors is so important, why taking that board of directors concept is so important at every level, whether you're, establishing a board for an organization, like a formal board,
Yes.
whether you're putting together an executive team, whether you're putting together kind of your own personal board of directors. But that diversity of thought, the diversity in how people see the world, how they adopt to change, how they decide that something is a good idea or not, that is really what you're talking about.
It is. And there's also this idea of being comfortable and even seeking people who disagree with you, not just confrontationally disagree with you, but who think differently, right? Who hold different but compatible values that are sort of under the umbrella of your full company's or organization's value system. Can you comfortably disagree? Is that welcome? What happens in a boardroom meeting when somebody disagrees? Is it like crickets and terror, or is it, that's interesting? Tell me more.
Yeah. And again, it's so funny because all these topics are so interrelated, but that's really what Carl Swart was talking about in elevating your teams, is having that level of trust where you can debate without hostility, that have that creative discord that makes you better.
Totally.
Right?
Yes. Yeah.
I love how these topics are all coming together. It's exciting to think about these recipes.
It is amazing how often we find that these themes intersect, right? Like every conversation we have, it ties back, and there's a multiplier effect the more that we get into these conversations, either between ourselves or with the guests. I'm loving this.
Yeah, I am too. And I love that, because my next question is,
we're
talking about, we started this conversation talking about the creativity of an organization.
Yes.
And gauging that and creating a culture to improve the creativity of an organization.
Yeah.
But I also know that you have thoughts about an individual elevating their own creativity, which is a key element to elevating the creativity of an organization. So can you talk about, okay, somebody's listening to this today and they're thinking, hey, I maybe have been on the institutional side of things and I'm interested in exploring, moving a little bit to a different part of that matrix.
Yeah.
What do they do?
I see. So this is interesting because even at the corporate level, the organizational level, step one in elevating the creativity of an organization is focusing on the individual.
Mm-hmm.
And the first step really is to demystify. I'll get them both in one. Demystify what creativity is, because it is like this. It's this nebulous, like, you're either the fairy godmother blessed you or she didn't, and I'm sorry. But the reality is, creativity, at least the part where you're relying on your brain to come up with ideas, is actually can be really clearly understood. It's not you just had the good luck of an idea popped in your head today, but you can create. You can sort of set your brain up to succeed in repeatedly, regularly, reliably producing ideas for you if you know how to set it up. And I know you're going to ask me about resources, so I'm ahead of you.
Oh no, we're getting predictable, which I know you really don't like to be predictable. So we'll have to work on that.
Maybe I'll figure out a way to make this less predictable. Rather than a large book, what you might have been expecting. This has got to be like one of the smallest books in my entire collection. This is by James Webb Young. I think this book is like 100 years old or more. And it is called A Technique for Producing Ideas. And I read this book and I was like, that is exactly what works, right? When you can reflect on the moments when ideas have come for you and look at what is common across them, find the pattern that has allowed you to produce ideas when you have, it just, you totally get it. It's like you just get the operating system. You could see it like out on the page. I totally get it. Right. So it's literally, and here it is, you don't even need the whole book. You need this page. And it's the 5 steps. Gather the material, think, I'll explain that. Take a break. Step 4 literally says the idea. And then step 5 is development. So let me break this down. On a personal level, if you are looking to have a more regular experience of ideas coming up for you when you want to solve a problem, create a thing, address an issue, whatever it is, step 1 is to gather, right? So that's however you choose to do this, bring in all the relevant information. Maybe you're solving problem at a business, you do intake interviews. Maybe you're trying to create something, go on YouTube, find out whatever you want to create a mood board, do a collage. Mind mapping is actually really great. I'll save that for another episode. But give your brain information and try to avoid just the strict left and right, black and white, like just writing text. Go for video, go for pictures, go for feeling, go for objects, whatever you can do to just give your brain material to work with. And then it does say think, step 2. And in step 2, what it's really about is, how do these things combine? Can I relate this to that? You're just sort of playing really with all the material that you've put together. And maybe you're prioritizing things or ordering them in certain ways. It's just like, it's not about achieving something like really rigorous. It's, I'm going to just go swimming and all the things that I've gathered now. I'm going to look at this and imagine that, right? So just spend some time with the material. And then this is literally the most important step, is take a break.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually it. There is a presumption that I have finally shed myself of this, that when your brain is doing something, you'd be aware of it. Right? Like
right.
If there's thoughts occurring, well, we refer to them as thoughts, but if your brain is working, we presume that equals thoughts, and thoughts would be in my conscious awareness. Turns out that is not the case. The brain is doing things that are at a subconscious level while you're awake to create connections and to work with material. And that happens most effectively when you step away. If you've done a good job in step 1 and step 2, then you do this take a break thing. And it's not like, okay, I'm going to give it 15 minutes. I'm going to come back. And if it has, no, it's not like that. It's genuine break. It's going for a walk. It's like waiting for the next day. It's everybody says, I got the idea in the shower. Yeah. You weren't thinking about it, were you? It just came to you. It's like, where does that come from? It comes from all the activity that's happening at the subconscious level. So if you do step 1 and step 2 correctly and are serious about step 3, meaning you get unserious about what you're trying to solve and put it down for real, the ideas will come. 100% trustable for me. I've found this to be absolutely reliable, and it has been a game changer in terms of how creativity has manifested in my life.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I think you and I've had this conversation. I had an aha moment myself when I really understood that meditation is different for a lot of different people.
Sure.
And I understood it to be the absence of thought. Meditation was the absence of thought.
Yeah.
And really, for me, it is the absence of emotional attachment to thought.
Well said.
And so just allowing thoughts to go in and out of your brain without trying to drive to a particular outcome has been extremely rewarding for me. For me personally, like when I'm getting a massage, it's a great place for my mind to just kind of wander where you can't do anything, right?
Yes.
You're just allowing the thoughts to come in and come out and see what takes root. And we get, a lot of us are type A personalities. We're hard drivers.
Yeah.
And we're so focused on trying to control the outcome, trying to get the specific answer that we somehow have come up with, in a subconscious level. Like I know what the answer is supposed to be, or I need to find it in this way and in this time frame. That's really ruining our creativity.
Yeah, it's really true. We have this cartoon image that echoes in my mind from my youth. This thing, think.
Yeah. Winnie the Pooh.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, no, you have to really let it go. Now, you have in your massage practice, you carry like a journal now, like for immediate capture of post-massage insights, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Because and it's not every single one. It's not like I have, earth-shattering ideas once a week or once every other week or whatever. But it is a place that I can go, and I have all of these scrambled thoughts that come out on the other side of that much more coherent because they attach themselves and compartmentalize themselves in new and interesting ways, which I find quite rewarding.
Here's something interesting. So you were mentioning that the massage isn't 100% reliable, and I'm not going to suggest that the thing I'm going to tell you will get you to insights 100% of the time that you get massages, but it's going to get you closer. And here's what it is. If you have clearly, and I'll even say correctly, stated the problem,
Ah.
right? There's definitely ways to get that wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have clearly stated that really the outcome that you're trying to reach, not the invention you're trying to create, there's the difference. The outcome you're trying to reach, not the invention you're trying to create. And you have done a pretty good job in your gather and think, right? So here's kind of all the stuff that I learned about this, and I've been able to articulate the problem in the following ways, and here's some cool things, and I like the color orange, whatever it is. And you did that, and you played with those things. And then again, before your massage, correctly articulate the problem, then totally let it go. Fully go into your massage, not with this, and I'm going to come out. No, just let it go and see what happens.
That's great guidance. So there's an action item that we'll circle back and repeat maybe at the end of this episode. But a great action item for anybody listening is to
book your massage,
book a massage, or whatever, book a walk, whatever. Right?
Yeah.
Clearly articulate the problem statement. All right. So what's interesting about this conversation is because I think that at least my perception of what you're discussing is that there are some other characteristics that would assist someone in elevating their creativity. Like if you've worked on being more open-minded.
Oh, sure.
Right? Or worked on, so that one seems a natural overlap between creativity and open-mindedness.
Yes.
Okay. You agree with that? Are there others, or are there other things that you can, as people are working on their own personal development plans, these are some other activities and efforts that will help you with creativity?
Totally, yes. So the list that I have for the attributes that will help a person develop creativity, just in terms of personality type, which you can tweak if you work at it. Curiosity, which what I would parallel to open-mindedness, right? You're you're interested in things. So if somebody comes up with an idea, you're not in a sort of posture about it. You're, tell me more, right? So you lean in to learn about what's around you and what people have to share and what objects do, and just at that positive attitude, right? So that might work rather than, there's 100 ways to say we've tried that before, or we don't have enough money for that, or just whatever. Just like start with that might work. How can we make that work, right? Rather than the opposite. Motivated, right? So you have the energy to carry through. You have the determination about reaching the end of something. That's another important one if you're looking to actually get ideas moving beyond just your mind. And then boldness. And I wouldn't say fearlessness. Rather, what I would say is finding comfort while fear is present.
Yes. Being comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah. And there are, there's countless exercises to develop each and all of these. I think we may have previously talked about the blind contour exercise, which I love, which is where two people, they're sketching each other. They take 2 minutes to sketch each other, but you put the pen down once, you continue, you don't look at it, you're just looking at the person. 2 minutes is up, then you get to look, right? And what that allows you to do is sort of bypass the inner critic, which can affect your positive attitude, which can even affect your curiosity and your boldness. So that's a great personal exercise. Actually, what I'll do is I'll include a link to a list of personal exercises for creativity development. And, some of them address multiple of these attributes. Some are very, very specific, but I've been using these practices for a long time. Is it time for another book? Because I have one.
Yeah, please. And then I have a story about an exercise. You got another book? All right.
Love this book. So this
Creative Hacks for Curious People.
Creative Hacks for Curious People. This is from the Stanford D School. And I've put a few.
I was going to say, how come that the Amazon delivery guy has not brought this to my house yet? Because normally you and I have a pretty standard, sending you this book practice. So this is not even one I haven't seen. I'm impressed.
I should send you this. In some ways, this is like, it's funny. I should have, and if I'm really being honest with myself, I have been complimented for my creativity for a long time. And there's something about it that's like, that's what's precious about me is my creativity. But like more and more, I'm excited about helping other people develop that in themselves rather than, I want to be uniquely creative in the world, which is sort of a ridiculous approach.
So it's interesting to think about these practices. You may know, we've talked about this, I think, before. Yeah. I went into an immersive leadership development program through the University of Washington years ago.
Oh, you mentioned it. Yeah.
And it was a cohort, 30 people maybe were in this cohort. I was so fortunate that I got to do this. And we met in person once a quarter. And we were all over the country. So one quarter we met in Arizona, one quarter we met in Seattle, one quarter we met in Colorado Springs. Anyway, when we were in Seattle, the whole teaching of that week was improv. So we were together for about 3 days, and the instructor had an improv performer come in. And I remember sitting at the table like, what does this have to do with leadership? Why are we learning about improv? Which, of course, I then developed. The first rule of improv is yes, and.
Yes,
you can't reject anything. You have to say yes, and. And so that became a pivotal moment for me. But the exercise that we had to do in front of these 30 people is they had a random PowerPoint slide deck. So like just random pictures. And you had to invent a product, stand in front of the room.
Yes.
The slides would come on behind you, and you would have to incorporate the picture from behind you into your sales pitch real time.
That's fantastic.
And like the fear.
Totally.
Right? I mean, so uncomfortable. So, I mean, like the sweat, right? Like, oh my gosh, it's almost my turn. Oh my God, it's almost my turn. Oh my gosh, it's almost my turn. But it was so fun. It was so fun. We had a great time. And I have reflected back on that experience and realized how important that exercise was to my own creative development.
Well, first of all, like, well done leaning in, right? I'm sure you either were trying to figure out, can I escape this room in time? Where's the fire alarm? Or am I going to do this? That's such a powerful thing to overcome the resistance that's coming up. Like, oh my God, I have to perform. I have to think. I have to improvise. Mm-hmm. Second, your use of yes and has been, I have noticed it since I met you. You've been absolutely consistent about it. You have absolutely used that lesson in your life, and I freaking admire the hell out of it. You just nailed that.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks. It's so easy, right? It's such an easy switch to flip, right? Yeah. It's 2 words, and it's easy to teach, right? And it has changed a lot of how I solution design, but so much how I team build, and is such an important component to building trust.
So what I'm curious about with the yes and, because it's in a purely natural state for you, that is clearly evident. What I'm curious about is there's the impulse that people have when they're like when somebody has said something, and it's like like how did you come to recognize that state? Do you have a name for what that state is? What do people look for in themselves to recognize they're about to say the opposite of yes and, or something that wouldn't get them as far as yes and would?
Oh gosh, that's a great question. I think for me, a lot of these teachings happen simultaneously. Yes and was a language that I was learning on top of a lot of other learnings.
Yeah.
And really what I was learning is to have a better filter. That everything that popped into my head did not need to come flying out of my mouth. And the ability to just sit and listen and be quiet and think before I spoke was so much more important for me. And yes, and resonated with me and stuck with me primarily because I had to learn to think about interacting with people in a whole different perspective.
Yes.
I would go into any kind of engagement with another person wanting with a completely selfish motive. Not that I was a selfish person. Yeah. But I always had a selfish motive, right? I wanted to express my thought. I wanted to express my emotion. I wanted to have credit for having a good idea. I wanted people to think I was smart. Whatever. It was a selfish motive that I brought into that interaction. And when I came away from that leadership immersion, my interactions with people were completely the opposite. I went into interactions with people thinking about them and what did they need and how could I help them with their thoughts and their feelings. And
Yeah.
that made the yes and so easy to implement.
That's so clear to me when you lay it out like that, because I have seen people use yes and from the selfish motives just because they think it's a tool to get their selfish motives achieved,
Mm-hmm.
their aims, and you can you can tell that they're still just saying no, but right.
Yeah.
But what you're talking about, it's not a shift of language first; it's a shift of motive first, and
Mm-hmm.
that shift of motive is served by the use of language.
That's right.
Really powerful.
That's right.
I know I'm going to have to edit this. Just give me one second. I want to grab something because it was a
Okay.
hoot of an exercise. I just have to see if I can find it.
Okay.
So this exercise is actually pretty specific to marketing, so it may not be as universally applicable as what you were just talking about with yes and improv, which is fun. But this took a lot of improvisation to do this. So
Mm-hmm.
this is the 4-envelope game. Great
Okay.
name. And there are 4 envelopes here. So one of them is called the target market, one of them is called channel, one of them is called the offering, and one of them is called the budget. And the way that this works is you break out into teams and you draw one card from each of those envelopes. And your budget could be anywhere from $500. We got revenue split, $250,000, trade. Okay, so like a lot of options there. Offering, cat groomer, tiny homes, knitting supplies, mini storage, electric scooter, like really, really broad stuff, but mostly B2C stuff. Channel, like what is the main channel you're going to use? Social media, storefront marketing, guerrilla marketing, print, radio, etc. And then your target market, and this is where it always gets very interesting, golfers or 20-something bros or over 65 or teachers.
Fun.
So
I
you
got
could
it.
be knitting supplies through the newspaper to 20-something bros with $500. And it's like, oh my God, how am I going to do this? So you have to get like ridiculous basically. And it's fun to get ridiculous because when you go that route and then eventually come back to, okay, well, that was fun, but what did we actually learn in that process that we could bring back from the ridiculous to the practical, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that's always powerful. There's a Airbnb. I can put the link in the description. Airbnb. There was something that I found of theirs where they were talking about this exercise that they do called 11 star. What the heck is 11 star? So, they basically described a 5-star experience has pretty much become a placeholder for nothing went wrong. It was pretty good, right? Yeah. So where do you go from there? So they invented this dialogue that they have internally on, well, what would an 11-star experience look like,
Interesting.
And they get just like share the ideas. Like, you have the butler comes and meets you at the door and there's catered food in there and they have set an arrangement of flowers. And then they brought in the Rolling Stones for a backyard concert. It's just like go nuts, right? With what would be possible. And then Elon comes to take you out into space. Wow. Okay. But roll it back. And in that exercise, they did find some ideas. Maybe they couldn't go that insane, but it brought them out of a pretty small box that they couldn't recognize until they went out into outer space, like even literally with the Elon comment. And then, okay, now that now we're at 30,000 feet, what are we really able to do? So sometimes just going to the insane and the ridiculous gets you opportunities to find the truly practical.
It's funny. I did an exercise one time at an organization, a little bit like your 4-envelope game.
Yeah.
But I broke people up into groups and I gave them a specific, we were revenue cycle people. So I gave them a specific revenue cycle problem to solve. And then everyone had to draw a personality out of the envelope. Everybody drew a personality, right? So you had the bean counter, you had the Department of No, you had, agrees to everything. You had the person that was disengaged, right? So we created these personality profiles.
Yes.
And then everybody had to draw and then become that person in the meeting and then present what they got accomplished when they got very little accomplished because everyone was being contrarian kind of in their own way. But to your point, it was funny. And we took it to this ridiculous place to
Yeah.
make the point that at some point or other, we've probably all been these very difficult personalities and recognize that they are impediments to creativity and progress. So
That's
there's a lot of ways you can illustrate that.
Totally, yes. That I actually really do like that exercise, and there's a twist on that exercise, the six hats version, where it's not so much. I mean, I really do appreciate the lessons of what happens when people are contrarian; they're only thinking in certain ways. But there's a flip side where if you assign a way of thinking that has a positive sort of intent behind it, so the factual hat, the hat of the heart, the red one, the hat of the heart, right? So expressing the feelings and emotions, self-esteem kind of stuff. The judge's hat, that's a person who's there to look at risks and what's going on with concerns and the critical thinking. The optimist's hat, guys, if this works, right? And that's that person. And then the creative hat. And if you assign these roles, what you're asking for is for people to think maybe out of their comfort zone. Like somebody who would say, well, you gave me the green hat, the creative hat. Can I count the beans instead? Right. Like that, you're just bringing more out of people. But this is actually not just so much a lesson as a truly practical way to apply a creative methodology in a practical business process.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's super interesting. Well, being the leader of this particular episode, feel like I need to help us land the plane because you and I could talk about all of these ideas for days on days.
Truly.
So, okay, we had one action item that we already talked about. So recap the one thing that you already told us we should be doing or could be doing to elevate our creativity.
Well, let's see. Did I talk about too many things to know which one you're meaning? The demystifying, that one?
Yeah. Yes, I believe that's correct.
Yeah. So the first thing really is it's very common that people have a misunderstanding of creativity and to take the time. I'll link some resources here, but take the time to help your team understand that it is something that everyone can develop. And if you start with just understanding how ideas come out of your brain, which was from the book, A Technique for Producing Ideas, you are well on your way to improve creativity, both as an individual and as an organization.
Great. Are there other action items you would recommend for our audiences that for perhaps the advanced class?
Sure. Make it safe to fail. So take an honest look, right? Grade your own paper. Is it punitive to fail, or have you made it safe? And that's going to be a huge difference. If it has not been safe, you're going to have a steep climb, but it will be worth it because the business outcomes on every area of every function of business can be improved. Thinking about setting up your space for creativity, is it just like vertical, horizontal cubes kind of thing? Is there any sense of creativity, color, Play-Doh, whatever, just in the room at all? Does it look like you're encouraging creativity, or does it look like you're encouraging stay in the lines, buddy? Just like, again, grade yourself honestly on that. And then, practice creativity in conjunction with business discipline. What we were talking about, the six hats thing. So not just, hey, okay, now we're going to do the blind contour drawing, but we're going to seriously do a thing that our business needs to do, whether that's an ideation session or whatever. And we're going to bring these techniques into it. So it's not, we're out here making creativity happen in some bubble outside of our normal business processes. We're going to change our normal business processes by using creative techniques.
That's awesome. That's a great list. And as we wrap up, I just want to tell you that every time I'm with you, I am inspired to be more creative. And it touches so many parts of my life. You just have no idea.
Wow,
so thank you. Yeah. Thank you for being you. Thank you for bringing your knowledge and experience to our listeners today. And I look forward to hearing their creative stories.
Heck yes.
All right.